Hello, you're about to listen to One Time You Told Me. I'm your host, Randy Mays, and I'm here with my co-host, Jenn. Today, we're going to introduce you to our podcast. Okay, so we're here. Again, my name is Randy. I'm sitting across from Jenn.
Hi, Dad.
For those who haven't had their morning cup of coffee, Jenn is my daughter. And I'm going to introduce the podcast and how it came to be. I got some audio equipment, some pretty nice audio equipment, started playing around with it, and realized that it sounds pretty good. And through good, high-quality audio equipment, I don't hate my voice recorded. So I started thinking about it and coming up with some ideas for podcasts, and was talking one day with Jenn about some of the topics that I was thinking about doing.
Bounced a couple off, and I keenly noted that traffic's not necessarily the most exciting topic, but that you have been a volunteer with the fire department, and that is a very exciting topic. And you've got some amazing stories from my childhood.
Yeah, I do actually. There are some that I've even written down that fairly entertaining, and there's some life-changing stories that I probably won't get into because they're not pleasant stories, but they do help form who I am. But some of the stories are very entertaining and some fairly funny, and yeah, they go back 33 years actually. So let me segue into that. I have been with fire for 33 years in some form or fashion. Technically, I'm now a city volunteer, but everything I do is for the fire department. And
for reference, I'm only 30. So when I say I've heard these stories forever, I mean it.
Yep. I started with fire in 1990 as a volunteer, first responder, and worked my way up through the ranks, became an engine company officer. And in 1996, the program was changed to take the engine company away from the volunteers for training reasons. And nobody on the volunteer side was overly thrilled about it. I understood it, though. The training requirements were too demanding and getting harder and harder every year.
Yeah, for the volunteer level.
Yeah, and it was, you have two engine companies responding to a call, and you can't have different training levels showing up.
Yeah.
They all have to be trained to the same level. And when you got a career crew they train all the time, and you got volunteers who can't train all the time, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So they moved us we already had an aid car, and they moved what was called air unit. What is that? Air unit the air is not, it's not a helicopter. Air provides air supply for the SCBAs, the air packs that the firefighters wear.
Hold on. For those who don't know what that is, what is an SCBA?
Self-contained breathing apparatus, which is very similar to a scuba, which is self-contained underwater breathing apparatus.
Right.
It's it's a bottle they wear with a system on it that brings the pressure down to what you can breathe, and they need filling on the scenes, obviously.
Right.
So Cleveland was one of the first departments in the area to come up with an air unit that could go to the scene and fill those bottles. But we also put generators and lights and things like that on it, and had lighting equipment on it, and rehab supplies.
So it was like the toolkit for the firefighters on scene.
Yeah. And we staffed that for a number of years. And that made a big difference in how the scenes unfolded, especially the rehab part of it. Giving the firefighters the ability to get rehab supplies. And
real quick, what does rehab mean on a scene?
Gives the firefighters the ability to come out of the scene, get away from it, get dressed down into their civvies, if you will, get out of the heavy bunker gear and stuff like that.
So it's like taking a break.
Yeah, get cooled off, get monitored for health, get drinking water or Gatorade or something like that, get some food in them. Just get out of the scene, and because you work really, really hard when you're working at a fire scene. and they need to be able to rest.
Yeah, important.
Yeah, it's become mandatory now. They work a certain period of time. They have to rest for a certain period of time, and so that the air unit provides the ability to do that. So we had the 8-car in the air unit, and in 2010 they started the transition to move the volunteers out of the air unit. They moved it to a career station and started moving. Kind of split the duties, and in 2012 the volunteers were fully removed from air unit duties, and so we were just an aid car. 2012 was also the year they brought in Fire Corps to the volunteer program, which was a separate program, and I joined that as well.
What is Fire Corps?
Fire Corps is actually a division. That's where it's the city, not the fire department. It's a division of Homeland Security. It's the same.
Oh, wow.
Falls under the same umbrella that CERT falls under, which is the Citizens Emergency Response Teams.
Okay.
That staff certain areas for disasters.
Right.
Allows people to be self-sufficient after like earthquakes or like that, where you can't rely on the services. And there's a variety of other programs that fall under Homeland Security, and Fire Corps is one of them. And within Fire Corps, there was a scene photography program, and that's what I do. I go to all kinds of different incidents, mostly fires, but significant car crashes and rescue events, and take photographs. Which
is arguably the coolest part of your job coming back.
Yeah, it's actually provided a lot. It's very rewarding, and it's kind of cool in the respect that I get to go to these fire scenes, and I don't have to do any of the heavy lifting.
Yeah, you're there seeing these very unique and arguably scary situations, but you're seeing the unique side of how it all works, and your literal job is to capture it. Yep. And some of the pictures that come out of it, unless you're there on the scene, you would never know about.
Well, and that's part of what it really provides, because the primary use for the photographs is debriefing on the times where they do debrief an incident. They don't debrief them all. But when they do a debriefing, a picture is really worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
You can talk about, well, this is where we park, because rig placing is really important on a fire scene. The first engine company has specific areas that they should and should not park. You got to leave room for a truck, for example. If you're going to be utilizing the truck to get onto the roof of the structure to cut holes and ventilate and what have you, you got to leave room for it to do that.
Okay.
And that doesn't always happen. They're a lot better at it now, but as a first engine company officer, there's a lot of things to be thinking about.
Yeah, and you don't want to be wasting time moving a truck.
Well, if the first engine unit is going to be pulling lines, again, we're talking about a structure fire, they're going to be pulling lines. You can't move it.
Oh,
Once it's there and got lines pulled, that's where it sits.
There. Okay.
And so there's a variety of things to think about. You got to be thinking about where you're placing the supply line. If you block the street, if you have to lay across the street, which sometimes you do, you've now blocked that street from other rigs going. They're either on one side or they're on the other. They can't.
Yeah, they don't cross the path.
Can't cross it. You cannot drive over a fire hose. So there's a lot of little things to consider like that, and having photographs of that can help tremendously. This is where this rig wound up. This is where this rig wound up, and then I also try on every incident to take photographs of every side of the structure, called a 360 of the structure. And it's called the A, B, C, and D side. On most structures are just 4 sides, with A being the front of the structure, and then it's clockwise. So B is the left side, and then the back is C side, and D is the right side. And I do that so, again, as they're talking about the incident, they're going to reference the side of the structure, and if they can see. So remember, on the C side, we had this.
Yeah.
So they can see that in photographs, and that's been proven to be very helpful. And
I bet it's invaluable.
It does, and it lends itself a lot towards safety.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Where hazards were, and I remember one time there was a a big hole in the backyard. It was, the opening was probably a foot in diameter, but it was 3 or 4 feet deep. And it was hidden in brush. It was really, you couldn't see it very well at night. And fortunately, they found it without someone finding it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And put up a cone or something like that near it. But I took a bunch of pictures of it from afar and what have you. And it was just kind of highlighted that this is where it was. Somebody found it, but these are the sort of things you kind of need to watch out for when you're, out and someone's backyard or something like that that's overgrown or something like that. There's hidden hazards that you need to pay attention to. So there's all kinds of just little subtleties like that.
Yeah.
And again, pictures are worth 1,000 words. And then sometimes it's nice to have a photographic trail of photographs, or photographic memories of an incident.
Yeah.
Just to record it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do. Photographic recording of an incident, just for to have them, to be able to show future crews, this is a call we went on, and this is what happened, and what have you. So,
any amount of training is good, especially in the fire force. Like, any amount of training for a job is good on any job, but when it's the fire department and it's people's lives and livelihoods at stake, I can't imagine where it would be a bad thing to have the information. Like those, and that's part of why I say it's so cool, even though cool may not be the word that comes to mind, that you are a scene photographer, because it's an element to the job that really just doesn't come from anywhere else.
No, and it's actually a fairly unusual. Part of the benefit that I bring is my experience as a frontline firefighter, trained in fireground scenes. Means I know what a fireground is made up of. I know the do's and the don'ts, the hazards, and incident commanders. They all know me in this area. Both Kirkland and Redmond know me. And they don't have to worry about me because I know what I'm doing. Yeah. I know where not to go.
You know how to keep yourself safe and get the information.
And I know, and they all know, that my primary thought process is I'm not going anywhere that's dangerous. Yeah. I will sometimes stay clear of a structure until it's done off-gassing, because I don't like getting too close to something that is producing smoke that's not healthy. Yeah. And I've told them sometimes like that. It says, I'll wait for an hour or so before I go into the backyard, because I can't get in there because they get too close to the structure, and it
still
smells.
Off. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you don't get that unless you've got someone who's got years of experience. Yeah. And it's a bit of a topic right now because I'm not getting any younger. I'm still thrilled to do this. I'm really happy that they let me do it. They're very happy that I do it. But at some point in time, I'm not going to be able to do it anymore. And my ability will fade before my desire does, I'm sure. I think every once in a while something will happen that, when Bill passed, I started questioning whether I was still willing to do this. And it came out that I was. But yeah. So what happens when I retire? There isn't anybody coming in right behind me. There was one other gentleman who was a past volunteer who was part of Fire Corps and was doing scene photography work for a while, and he's interested in coming back. But training someone else is really the only option. Retired career firefighters, the last thing they want to do is go back and get involved with the fire service. Right. When they retire.
They've retired. Yeah, they've retired for a reason.
Yes.
And you can't just have any old pyro walk in. No. So anybody who has an interest in it might be not who you want there.
Right. Well, and there's a lot of people that would love to go take photographs at a fire scene, but they have no idea what they're doing. Yeah. Walking around at a fire scene, or for that matter, at a car crash.
Absolutely.
They don't know where to go and what not to touch.
And how to stay safe.
Yeah, exactly. So you can train that, but the problem is, leading up to Bill's passing, and a lot of you don't understand or know what I'm talking about, and that's a story for a different time. A good friend of mine and my direct supervisor in the fire department passed a couple of months ago.
And his mentor.
Yes, one of them. Yes, but prior to that, I had not been on a call. Well, a week before his passing, I'd gone on the first call for Kirkland in several months. Mm-hmm. It had just been dead quiet. Now, there had been some calls, but for one reason or other, I wasn't able to go. Mm-hmm. So I went to a call, and then from that moment on, for that call on, I had about 5, maybe 6 calls in that many weeks. Mm-hmm. It's just a sudden surge of calls, including the day after I found out that Bill passed. That was difficult.
Yeah.
And then they just stopped again.
Yeah.
So how do you bring in an apprentice when you can't tell him when the next time you're going to go out on a call is?
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
But
it
difficult.
will have to happen.
You're going to have to find someone who has enough drive to do it, who's willing, because you can't just say we're going to go on. You're going to have to go to 4 calls and then you're ready to go, because not only do you have to bring them in and get them experience, you have to get incident commanders to know and trust them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are a couple of ways of doing that. One might be some ride-alongs, and you're going to have to do something like ride-alongs. They're going to have to spend some time with them. But the incident commanders are going to want to see them on a call.
Yeah.
And
the only way that that's going to happen is someone buddying up with you.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And hey, maybe it'll be someone who's heard stories for 30 years.
There is that.
I have dabbled in photography once or twice. Yep. I might have a inclination towards this side of the civil world,
Yeah.
Well,
that's an interesting thought. And obviously, as we talked offline, I'm going to explore that possibility, but
I hope so.
That's not for our podcast.
No.
So that's one of my many life experiences. It obviously has the largest impact on who I am. And as I mentioned prior to, something that's not for the podcast are some of the stories that aren't so pleasant, but that have really made some big impacts in shaping my life. There are positive ones that have as well. Some of the relationships I've developed over the years are
we are made up of who we surround ourselves with.
Yeah, and the life experiences that have occurred. There's been some good and some bad. Things that I could have gone an entire life without having experienced. But I've experienced them, and they're part of who I am. Mm-hmm. So, I sometimes stop and wonder, who would I be had I not joined the fire service? And part of that is, by the way, I started dating your mother. I knew your mother prior to, but I started dating your mother when she started helping me study for my EMT class.
Wow. Okay.
Which came about because I was in the fire service.
I literally can't picture any kind of life with you not participating.
Yeah.
Like that is against your character, like that's, I'm 30, you've been doing this for 33 years, and it's every 6th night for as long as I could remember. Mm-hmm. As a little kid, it was your turn to go to the station. So,
and back when you were a kid, I was actually pulling a lot of extra calls. I was way more than every 6th night.
Yeah, but that was the schedule. Yeah, we knew that every 6th night, Dad's leaving as dinner's going, and he'll be home before we wake up. That was the routine. I cannot imagine if that wasn't. Yep. That doesn't compute to me.
Including the holidays, there was there were 6 crews, so we had a 6-night rotation. And it just happened to fall that if you got Halloween, you got Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, and New Year's Eve.
Yep.
those are the shifts you got. But you only got them once. I don't remember what the fall. In other words, you didn't get it every year.
Yeah.
Except 6 years in a row.
When
I
did.
changed shifts.
Yeah.
And
I remember
and
that.
moved to a shift that got the holiday routine. And
Yep.
Your mother was furious by the 6th time.
I'm sure she was.
So
You also have 5 children. I don't know if we mentioned that yet either, but like with 5 children to deal with, yes, she was reasonably upset.
yes. Yeah. Well, and we were talking about Halloween duties, which prior to that shift phenomenon coming along, I always took you guys out.
Yeah. Yeah, you did.
And then that first year I couldn't, and then the second year I couldn't, and then it just became Mom's thing to do.
Until it was over.
Until it was over, yeah. Yeah, so... but yeah, so that's who I am. I also, my pay career, I started out as a mechanic. Did that for a number of years. Started as a volunteer firefighter as I was a mechanic. And really excelled at diagnostics.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about that. That's part of what I am thrilled that you picked up from me is your ability to think things through.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what made me pat myself on the back is such a good mechanic. Is I didn't focus on what was wrong per se. I figured out what was wrong by figuring out how it was supposed to be right.
Yeah,
how it worked.
How it works, yeah.
And in figuring out how it works, then why it's not working was a lot easier to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was a mechanic, and then I started working for a company that my father owned called Datalink Group, which was in the industrial automation industry. Taught myself a bunch about that, how to program PLCs. I did wireless data communications. And still am in the automation industry, not for Datalink anymore, but now I'm an application engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the paid side of my life. But
You're a very techie person.
yeah, well, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I get that from you.
I like using my mind, and that's
Yeah.
the hobby stuff that I do. I've got I got to get back into it. I got to put my shop back together. It's a disaster right now. But I've made those gadgets, the Monday machine.
Mm-hmm.
It's a machine where you flip a switch and an arm pops out, and then with the finger pushes the switch back closed, and then it pops back in. Well, that was an exercise in figuring out how to solve problems, because there was a variety of things that I had to figure out how to do.
And to clarify, the middle finger
comes
out
and
pushes it back closed.
Yeah.
Hence the title, The Monday Machine, because it just feels like a Monday.
Yeah, you one step forward and it pushes you back. But things like, I built that from scratch. The mechanism I made out of brass parts.
Mm-hmm.
That the only thing I didn't build was the motor gearbox assembly. I bought that, but it took that and made a mechanism that rose up and it pushed a door open and
you tinkered,
and then rotated back down, and then the other one was the psychic complaint box.
Yeah.
You think about your complaint, you push a button, and then the middle finger rises up and tells you what your answer is.
Yep. Yep.
And that one also had some interesting challenges because I had to open the lid for the finger to come out, but the amount of motion it took to open the lid was about 2/3 that of what it took for the finger to come up. So that was a very interesting challenge. But that was what it was about, was the challenges of making it. I got to rebuild the Monday machine. I knocked it off a table once and it completely broke apart. So I got to...
Yeah. But the point of it is to have something to tinker on, and that's what it is.
Yeah, to build and solve problems.
But it highlights who you are. You are a very technically inclined, mechanically savvy volunteer.
Yeah, who likes to talk.
Yeah, and you're good at it.
Yeah,
You've got
appreciate that.
I mean, I've been told my whole life, aside from hearing the stories my whole life, people who have heard them with me have always enthralled and have always said they have a really good time. You know, when I was in high school, you were the driver's ed teacher to all of my friends.
That's right. I did that for a couple of years, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they all loved it.
Yeah.
You were more popular than me for a while. And that's not an exaggeration. So many of my peers had your class, and you really are one of the best teachers in terms of just getting an idea across to someone who doesn't understand it that I've ever seen. You know,
wow,
you can,
thank you.
I'm being honest, your ability to translate what you understand is incredible, and it's a joy to listen to. So I'm very excited for this podcast, you know?
Anyhow, well, those are some of my life experiences. More will come out, I'm sure, as time goes on.
Mm-hmm. We couldn't fit it all into 40 minutes.
No. I will say, though, there's some coming topic ideas that we have.
Mm-hmm.
One is this, what we've talked about, is stories.
Yeah.
And not necessarily all just mine. You've got a few.
I have a couple throughout my 30 years.
Yeah. We also want to start looking at some interviews. I've got ideas for a few people.
With our own life experiences, we've met some pretty cool people.
Yep. And then with some specific topics, I know you've taken a very keen interest, rightfully so, in the JWST.
Yep. It is not just the James Webb Space Telescope, but the things that it is enlightening in astrophysics.
Right.
And everything that it has. I love comparing photos between the JWST and Hubble, and seeing essentially the exact same spots in space from a different light perspective, right? And seeing all of the different things that science is learning from it.
Cool.
Very.
Well, and I want to expand that to also talk about what I call the Star Trek effect.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is if we're ever going to get to a point, and I think that humanity it will at some point in time, if we survive, you get to a point where you'll have a 16-year-old Wesley Crusher studying warp theory.
Yeah.
With what it takes now to get through high school, education-wise, there's no way you could get to being in your 30s and get to warp theory.
No.
Because of all the education it takes to get to that point, all the math and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some things that are going to have to get left out.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, cursive, if I'm not mistaken, isn't necessarily taught at all schools.
For the most part, handwriting is not necessarily taught. It's typing.
Because technology provides us with the ability to do
exactly
that level of communication without good handwriting. And a lot of people don't like that. But the reality of it is the technology is not going to go backwards.
Right.
And the ability to communicate without having good cursive penmanship is always going to exist.
Exactly.
So you don't need it, and that gives us the ability to replace it with something else that we are going to need. Low levels of math are becoming the same way.
Yeah. Well, math itself it's changing altogether.
Right.
Right. And
we calculation. I mean, your cell phone has more calculative power than the space shuttles did.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, one of the key points of being a millennial is being told when we were growing up, we'll never have a calculator in our pocket. That is literally untrue.
Wear them on your wrist.
Exactly. It's the furthest fact from the truth, you know?
So how much math class can you cut out to replace it with higher levels of math that can get you closer to being able to get to warp theories sooner and younger?
Yeah.
That's what I call the Star Trek effect.
for me, I more look at it as an evolution of learning.
Yes.
But yes, you have titled it. And it's one of my favorite, like, thoughts to kind of dwell on, you know? The way that, you know, other people are thinking of the Roman Empire when they're thinking of nothing.
Right.
I'm dwelling on what does the expansion of knowledge mean?
The way mankind thinks has to change for the next really big evolution in science to take place.
And what I love about things like the JWST is I'm watching that change.
Right.
You know, I'm watching the infantile moments.
We have to be careful because I use oh shoot, I'm going to lose the terminology, but the Industrial Revolution, the fourth Industrial Revolution, we're kind of finishing up, and it got significantly disrupted by the supply chain issue that started with COVID-19.
Yes, it did.
And then we had COVID-19, which was reduced person power, reduced the ability for these manufacturers to supply parts for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't have the people to build the parts. You didn't have the people to move them around.
Supply the material.
And, and then you had two of the largest chip manufacturing plants in the planet burned down within a few months of each other.
Yeah.
Dramatically reducing the capabilities of producing chips. A lot of people didn't realize this, but, you know, you see stories about how Ford couldn't build trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't finish them.
Yeah.
So they were renting parking spaces by the acres.
Yeah.
To put unfinished trucks in. And people were like, well, they're huge manufacturing. They should be able to leverage these companies and get chips.
Doesn't work that way.
Well, it does, but they're not the big manufacturers.
Mm-hmm.
Smart technology companies are. Apple.
Mm-hmm. Amazon.
Amazon and Android.
Yeah.
Those are the big manufacturers. Those are the ones who said, you're going to build these chips and you're going to sell them to us because we're buying them by the hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
And Ford's buying them by the hundreds of thousands.
What I do find cool about... So science as a field has been halted for a little while, or at least slowed.
Well, but it's more than that. It's the Industrial Revolution was rapidly changing things to a just-in-time inventory.
Right.
The problem is that so everybody wasn't stocking up on supplies anymore. They would order it just as they need it and get it just as they need it.
Yeah.
Well, what that meant is that since they weren't stocking up on anything, and you could no longer get supplies, they went from being able to produce one day to literally having to stop production the next day, which meant that their supply chain stopped supplying other companies, and everything just stopped.
Except for in astrophysics, because you don't need any of it.
Right.
And that's what I like. That's what I love, and that's why I kind of clung to that.
But that, and fair enough, but that's not the Industrial Revolution part of it.
No.
But it's similar in that you got to be careful about your growth, because if you grow too fast, you're opening yourself up for some sort of disaster to wipe you out, and you have nothing to fall back on.
Not in theoretical science.
Maybe so.
That's why I love it so much, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe so.
Is like, it's one of the most significant things that we are searching for is proof of life on any other planet, right? At the exact same time that we are doing that, it's insignificant.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, right.
But it is the biggest question we want answered. And because we want the answer, we're going to get it. What that answer means for us could be nothing.
Right.
Right? But you can always go looking for the answers.
It may mean nothing in...
It's just one of the possibilities that it could be nothing.
Right.
Right.
But even if it means nothing in the immediate, it provides information that over the long term could shape the way things evolve.
Exactly. Like, there could be infinite possibilities, and one of those possibilities could be absolutely meaningless right? We could discover that there's no use to us from what we find out in space. But why not look for it until that's proven?
Right.
And that's what I love, especially about astrophysics and the stars. And
we're going to know what we're in for a billion years from now.
Yeah. Like
this is what happened a billion years ago there.
Exactly. It's like, so we're studying all of these things that are light years and light years away that we're studying just because we want the answer.
Yeah.
You know? And that is what's amazing to me. That is the purest form of human intrigue put to use.
Yep.
You know?
Anyway, we're getting deep into a topic that's supposed to be a topic for another time.
Yes. Okay, put a pin in it.
One of the other ideas that I came up with is, and this one would involve transitioning at some point in time. We're looking at possibly one of the platforms. I don't know where you're listening to this on, but it is as YouTube being a platform, and if it is, we may be able to put up photographs as we talk about things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I want to possibly be a topic is old photographs.
Mm-hmm.
There is and this will lead into another topic idea, an antique junk shop in Seattle, at the waterfront. And he has it's really a filing cabinet is really what it is. It looks like a dresser, but it's really...
I think it is a dresser. I think it's got standard dresser drawers.
No, it doesn't. It's blueprints. It's made for blueprints.
Oh, okay.
And they're drawers about 1 to 2 inches tall for putting flat files in.
Okay.
And they're full of... This guy goes out and he buys out estates.
Mm-hmm.
Usually estates where there are no families involved.
Right.
And since there's no families, there's no one to take the personal items like photographs.
Mm-hmm.
So he brings all this stuff back, and all this furniture and stuff is full of photographs.
Yeah, hundreds.
And he just puts them all in this cabinet, and everything's $1 a piece. And I've got some old photographs from them. Some of them I can't find. I really wish I could find them. I've got a photograph from the Evergreen Point before the bridge existed, in color too.
That's amazing.
It's a really cool photograph. I wish I knew where it was.
Yeah.
But that kind of history, photographic history, just fascinates me.
Absolutely.
Just thinking of the what ifs, or what was when that photograph was taken, what was going on, what were people thinking.
I try to be like, what did it feel like to stand there?
Yeah, stuff like that. So that's something I want to do, is go get some photographs from there and put them up and just talk about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then that leads into this shop is one of those places that is kind of an unknown known.
Yeah.
A lot of people know about it, but nobody knows about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a not so secret Seattle oddity.
Yeah, right.
Kin to the Seattle Troll.
Yeah.
People know about the Seattle Troll. They know about this
although
dresser
the
full
Seattle
of
Troll
pictures.
is probably a lot better known than this.
I mean, it is,
shop,
but like this antique shop is on a list of things to do in Seattle if you're coming from out of town. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
It is very known as this is an attraction in Seattle that is worth your time.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's what I've got that titled for now, as the Unknown Seattle Area Known Spots.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something. And there's one thing I will say about this podcast is that the concept is fluid right now.
Yeah.
You will, if you follow it, and I certainly hope that you do, you'll see it evolve.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of sums up how our conversations go. They evolve.
Yeah, they do.
We learn things to stay away from.
Yes, we did. We may be father-daughter, but we don't always agree.
No. Sometimes we can't agree to disagree.
Yeah. Those ones are swept in the middle of the rug, and they're going to stay there.
But there's just so many things out there to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are never going to hit this podcast. We're not going to talk about politics.
Yeah, no.
I just, it's so polar, and I don't want to turn anybody off. It's just not worth it.
No.
So, I don't want to upset anybody.
Yeah.
You know,
You don't really want to alienate people.
No.
I tend to not care as much, but
Yeah.
I very much respect that I have opinions that don't necessarily mesh with everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to push my opinion on anybody else. That's not fair.
Nope. You're absolutely right. And then, so we're just not going to go there.
Yeah.
And so there's some topics we're just not going to talk about. Some that just don't interest us.
Mm-hmm.
So we're probably not going to go there. Like, for example, I'm interested in traffic issues.
And I could really just not care.
Now, we may do some spots where I'll have a segment to talk about, and I'll just produce it, and we'll put it in somewhere, and it'll be just a segment that I produced.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure to pull some random topics out of the internet that you will probably have nothing to know about until I introduce it.
And maybe you produce a couple of segments, and here's a segment that Jenn produced. I don't know.
Well, maybe.
Like I said, it's fluid. So, and somewhere down the road, we may put a camera in here. It will point at me.
Yeah.
So,
I'm what we call a lurker on the internet.
So those are the things that are potentially coming. And wow, this went a lot longer than I thought it would.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We'll see what it comes out in the editing. But that's what this thing is all about. So I hope you have enjoyed it so far. I hope you've enjoyed it enough to come back and try it again.
We've enjoyed recording it, so
yeah,
we're gonna keep doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I sit here and think, God, are we gonna have something else to talk about? But we find a way.
Yeah, we could go on for far too long, so we should probably cut it out now.
Yep. So I'm Randy.
I'm Jenn.
And we will talk to you later.
Next time on One Time You Told Me.
Thank you. See you, folks.